Once upon a time, in a small Midwestern town with bright Friday night stadium lights and a diner that smelled like pancakes even at sunset, there lived a girl named Emma. Emma wasn't the kind of quiet that slips by unnoticed. She was the kind of quiet people misread. In the hallways of Lincoln High, where sneakers squeaked and lockers slammed like cymbals, she wore noise-canceling headphones without music, just for the boundary. She moved like a careful bookmark in a messy novel, present, patient, and a little out of place. Her mom worked double shifts at the hospital, and her dad drove a delivery truck along the I-80, so the apartment above the laundromat was often a hush of dish soap, dryer lint, and late-night weather reports. Emma knew the rhythms. The hum of the spin cycle, the clack of quarters in the metal change machine, the distant whistle of a freight train that came through town at 2:13 a.m. She knew the city bus schedule by heart and the best seat in the public library for evening sun, third row by the windows behind the shelf of true crime paperbacks no one checked out anymore. At school, friendship seemed like a magic trick that everyone else had learned in middle school. Groups shifted like flocks of starlings, and Emma watched them do it. How a glance, a shared joke, a nudge at the vending machine could stitch people together. When she tried joining conversations, words piled up behind her teeth like cars at a red light. By the time the light turned green, everyone had already crossed the intersection. Still, she had her rituals. After last period, she walked the 2 blocks to the library and borrowed the maximum number of books allowed, 10, which the librarian, Mrs. Cruz, stamped with a smile that said, "You again," as if Emma were a regular comet that swung by in predictable arcs. She read essays, cookbooks, road trip memoirs, and paperbacks about people who moved to new cities and discovered themselves in the neon flicker of late-night diners. If a chapter made her heart hitch, she copied a line onto an index card and taped it to her bedroom wall. The wall had grown into a collage of borrowed courage. Begin anywhere. Be kind to your future self. A map is not a promise, but it's a start. On Mondays, she volunteered at the animal shelter, where the dogs greeted her with skittering paws and honest eyes. On Wednesdays, she filled in answers on a community college's Open Creative Writing MOOC, where her username, MWrites, sat lonely in the forum among threads titled, "Anyone else stuck?" She rarely posted. She saved her thoughts for a private document called When You Don't Have Friends. It wasn't a complaint, it was an observation, a map of what the days looked like and how you could build little scaffolds of meaning anyway. A perfect grilled cheese, a paragraph that landed just right, a stray cat that started trusting you enough to show you its belly. One Friday in October, when the sky over the football field bruised into violet and the marching band scattered glittering brass across the bleachers, Emma paused on the sidewalk and considered walking towards the noise instead of away from it. The air smelled like kettle corn and cold metal, and the lights made miniature suns on the asphalt. She put her hand on the chain-link fence and felt it vibrate with the roar of the crowd. For a moment, she imagined stepping through the gate, finding a seat near a family with foam fingers, and letting herself be part of something loud. Instead, she kept walking, not out of fear, at least that's what she told herself, but because she had a plan. The library was open late on Fridays, and Mrs. Cruz had set aside a cardboard box labeled "Free, please take." It was filled with discarded books, covers torn, spines tired. Rejected things, Emma thought, are often where you find the best stories. She wanted to rescue one, bring it home, press its pages flat, and see if it would talk. Under the fluorescent hush of the stacks, Emma found the box. On top lay a paperback with a bright yellow cover, Roads You Didn't Take But Could Still. On the first page, someone had written in blue pen, "To whoever finds this, may you go." Emma slid the book into her backpack and checked out a spiral notebook from the $1 shelf. College-ruled, mint green cover, a few pages already scribbled on. She bought it with her own quarters. Outside, October had pulled a cooler over the town. Emma sat on the library steps and opened the mint green notebook. On that first clean page, she wrote a title, "When You Don't Have Friends." Then, under it, she drafted a list. Not a complaint, not a plea, a promise. 1. Learn one neighbor's name. 2. Try out for something, even if it's small. 3. Send a message in the MOOC forum. 4. Keep collecting good lines. 5. Find a place where people are allowed to start over. When she capped her pen, a gust flipped a page and revealed something she hadn't bought. A folded flyer, tucked there by whoever had owned the notebook before. In block letters, it read, "Open Mic Night, Saturday, 7 p.m. All ages welcome. The Covered Bridge Cafe. Tell a story. Sing a song. Read a poem. Start here." Emma traced the words with her thumb until the ink came off faintly onto her skin. Start here. The cafe was 3 bus stops away, next to the river that split the town like a zipper. She could go. She could listen. She could pretend for 1 hour that the silence she carried wasn't a wall, but a room, and rooms had doors that opened. She folded the flyer, tucked it in a pocket, and stood. Above the football field, the lights kept pretending it was still day, but over the river, the sky went honestly dark. Emma turned toward the bus stop. Tomorrow, she decided, she would try a different road. Saturday came slower than usual, dragging its feet through gray skies and the smell of rain. Emma spent the morning staring at her closet, trying to decide what kind of person she wanted to look like that night. She finally chose her denim jacket, soft from years of washing, and a red t-shirt that said, "Be kind anyway." By 6:15, she was on the bus, counting the stops in her head like punctuation marks. The streets outside were washed gold by the setting sun, puddles catching reflections of traffic lights and store signs. She could see the river ahead, dark and rippling, and the wooden bridge glowing faintly under string lights. The cafe sat just beyond it, tucked between a thrift shop and a florist. Its sign read, "The Covered Bridge Cafe. Coffee, stories, music." Inside, the air buzzed with nervous laughter and espresso steam. A stage no bigger than a rug stood near the corner, framed by fairy lights and a chalkboard that read, "Open Mic Starts at 7." Emma slipped into a chair near the back. The first performer was a boy with a guitar and trembling hands. He sang about leaving his hometown and finding out it followed him anyway. The audience clapped gently. Then a woman read a poem about her grandmother's kitchen. Then a kid recited a funny monologue about math homework and heartbreak. When the host asked if anyone else wanted to share, Emma's heart did something strange. It raced and steadied at the same time. Her hand almost rose, almost, but not yet. Instead, she opened a notebook, flipped past her list, and began to write. Maybe this is how it begins. Not with friends, but with people who don't yet know your name and still listen when you speak. As the night ended, someone tapped her shoulder, a girl about her age, curly hair tied up with a pencil. "Hey," she said, smiling, "that line you just wrote, I saw it over your shoulder. It's really good." Emma blinked, startled. "Oh, thanks. I didn't know anyone saw." "I'm Maya," the girl said. "You coming next week?" Emma didn't know what to say, but for the first time in a long time, maybe felt like a door that might actually open. Sunday mornings in Lincoln usually began with church bells and the smell of pancakes, but Emma's started with the echo of a conversation that wouldn't leave her alone. "You coming next week?" Maya had said, her voice warm and curious, like she already expected a yes. It had been such a simple question, but for Emma, it felt like someone had handed her a fragile key she wasn't sure how to use. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, watching how sunlight pooled in soft squares across the floor. Her mind replayed the night before, the crowd's laughter, the faint buzz of the espresso machine, the soft applause after every performance. It wasn't a party. It wasn't loud or careless. It was something smaller, kinder, like everyone there had been looking for something too. At noon, Emma went downstairs to the laundromat to start a load. As the washers hummed, she opened her mint green notebook and wrote, Maya. Curly hair, pencil bun, brave smile. She talks like she's used to being heard. I don't know what that feels like yet. She wasn't used to writing about real people, only fictional ones, but it felt good to see the name on paper. Around 3 p.m., her mom came home from the hospital, exhausted but smiling. Hey, sweetheart, how was your night? Emma hesitated, then said, I went to the cafe by the bridge. The one with open mic? Her mom looked pleasantly surprised. You? That's great, Em. Emma shrugged, trying to sound casual. It was nice. I might go again.
Her mom poured coffee and sat across from her. You should. You don't have to do everything alone, you know. The words stung, not because they were unkind, but because they were true. That evening, Emma opened her laptop, found the MOOC forum, and for the first time replied to a post. It was Maya's thread from weeks ago. Does anyone else write about loneliness? Emma typed slowly. Yes, I think loneliness has its own language. Sometimes I'm still learning how to speak it. She hit post before she could talk herself out of it. Then she closed her laptop and sat there, heart racing but lighter somehow. Across town, maybe, someone named Maya would read her words and answer. Monday morning came with gray skies and the sound of rain ticking softly against Emma's window. She didn't mind the rain. It made the world quieter, slower, more forgiving. She opened her laptop before school and checked the MOOC forum, not really expecting anything. But there it was, a reply. Maya writes, Hi, Em writes. I think you're right. Loneliness is a language. Maybe that's why writing feels like translation. What do you write about when you're learning? Emma read it 3 times, her pulse jumping a little each time. She didn't reply right away. She wanted to think about it, to find the right words. At school, the day unfolded as usual. The echo of sneakers in the hallway, the chatter that never seemed to include her, the teachers' voices bouncing off whiteboards. But something small had changed. It was almost invisible, but she could feel it, a single thread tying her to someone beyond those walls. At lunch, she went to the library instead of the cafeteria. She opened her notebook and began to write her response. I write about places that feel like waiting rooms, bus stops, laundromats, late-night diners, the spaces between what's next and what's over. What about you? When she got home, she posted it, and then, unable to help herself, she wrote another entry in her notebook. Maybe friends begin like this, not in hallways or crowded rooms, but in words, quietly shared. That night, Emma made a cup of cocoa and reread her old stories. They were mostly about characters who ran away toward cities, toward oceans, toward the unknown. She wondered if she'd been writing about herself all along. Before bed, she checked the forum again. Another message had appeared. Maya writes, Hi, Em writes. I think you're right. Loneliness is a language. Maybe that's why writing feels like translation. What do you write about when you're learning? Emma read it 3 times again, her pulse jumping a little each time. She didn't reply right away. She wanted to think about it, to find the right words. At school, the day unfolded as usual, the echo of sneakers in the hallway, the chatter that never seemed to include her, the teachers' voices bouncing off whiteboards. But something small had changed. It was almost invisible, but she could feel it, a single thread tying her to someone beyond those walls. At lunch, she went to the library instead of the cafeteria. She opened her notebook and began to write her response. I write about places that feel like waiting rooms, bus stops, laundromats, late-night diners, the spaces between what's next and what's over. What about you? When she got home, she posted it, and then, unable to help herself, she wrote another entry in her notebook. Maybe friends begin like this. Not in hallways or crowded rooms, but in words, quietly shared. That night, Emma made a cup of cocoa and reread her old stories. They were mostly about characters who ran away toward cities, toward oceans, toward the unknown. She wondered if she'd been writing about herself all along. Before bed, she checked the forum again. Another message had appeared. Maya writes, "Hey, random idea. Are you coming to the cafe again this Saturday? I might read something, not sure yet. I'd like to see you there, though." Emma stopped walking. Leaves crunched beneath her sneakers. Her breath fogged in the air. She hadn't planned on reading anything, but she had been writing. Pages and pages of small things that suddenly didn't feel small anymore. That night, she sat on her bed, notebook open, and read her favorite lines aloud. Some were shaky, some too honest, but they all felt like her. She circled one short piece titled Almost. It was about standing at the edge of something, friendship, courage, belonging, and taking one step forward, even if your voice shakes. When she finished reading it aloud, her hands were trembling, but not from fear, from the wild idea that maybe she could actually do it.
Maybe almost could become beginning. Saturday night came dressed in the hum of street lights and a nervous heartbeat. Emma stood in front of her mirror, holding the mint-green notebook like a shield. Her reflection looked back. Same denim jacket, same ponytail, but the eyes were different. There was something alive in them, something that hadn't been there a month ago. She left early, catching the 6:30 bus. The driver nodded at her like he recognized her by now. Outside, the world was draped in amber, the kind of evening that made everything look like a photograph. When she reached the Covered Bridge Cafe, it was already buzzing. The smell of cinnamon and roasted coffee beans filled the air, and fairy lights blinked like soft applause. Emma spotted Maya at a table near the front, flipping through her own notebook, a nervous smile tugging at her lips. "Hey," Maya said, looking up. "You came." "Yeah," Emma replied, voice small but steady. "Wouldn't miss it." They talked in starts and pauses, like tuning an old radio. Maya told her she was reading a short poem about growing up in a town that always felt one size too small. Emma admitted she'd brought something too, though she wasn't sure she'd actually read it. When the host called for new performers, Maya squeezed her hand. "You should." Emma smiled weakly. "You first." Maya walked to the mic, heart beating out of time, and read her poem. Quiet at first, then stronger. The room listened, the way people do when they actually care. When she finished, the applause came like a wave. Then it was Emma's turn. She took the stage, the mint-green notebook trembling in her hands. Her voice quivered at first, but the words began to carry her. "This is called Almost. I almost said hello. I almost stayed. I almost believed that someone might stay too. But maybe almost isn't a failure. Maybe it's a doorway." When she finished, the cafe was silent for a heartbeat. And then came clapping. Soft, but real. Maya was the first to stand. Afterwards, they sat together on the cafe steps, sharing a cookie and watching the lights shimmer on the river. Maya nudged her shoulder. "That was brave." Emma smiled. "It was almost brave. Almost is how all brave things begin." And in that moment, under the string lights and cool October air, Emma realized something. Loneliness hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. It had started talking back. Sunday morning sunlight streamed through Emma's window, soft and warm, like a hand on her shoulder. The first thing she noticed was how different the quiet felt. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, like it had company. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. a new message from Maya. Maya, still can't get over your poem last night. The line about almost isn't a failure. That hit hard. You writing more today? Emma smiled at the screen for a long time before typing back. Emma, maybe. You? Maya, always. Want to meet at the library later? Could use a writing buddy. Emma blinked. A writing buddy. The words felt unreal, like a wish that had accidentally come true. At 2 o'clock, she walked into the library, that same place where she used to sit alone behind the true crime section. But this time, Maya was there, laptop open, headphones around her neck, a coffee cup balanced precariously on a pile of books. "Hey there, partner," Maya said with a grin. Emma laughed. "Partner sounds serious." "It is," Maya said, eyes twinkling. "Serious writers." They spent hours in comfortable silence, writing side by side. Occasionally, one would whisper, "Does this line sound weird?" Or, "How do you spell metaphysical?" They traded stories like secrets and laughed until Mrs. Cruz gently reminded them that some people still think libraries are quiet zones. Before leaving, Maya tore a page from her notebook and handed it to Emma. "Friendship is when silence starts sounding like music." Emma folded it carefully and tucked it into her mint green notebook, right beside her almost poem.
That night, when she got home, she looked at her list, the one she'd written weeks ago on the library steps. She drew a check mark beside 2 lines. Learn one neighbor's name and try out for something even if it's small. Then beneath them, she added a new one. 6. Find someone who listens between the lines. For the first time, she felt like she was no longer writing a list of wishes. She was writing a story, and she was in it. By midweek, Emma noticed that the days no longer blurred together. They had texture now, edges, light, and tiny moments worth keeping. It wasn't that life had suddenly become perfect. It was that she'd started paying attention. At school, she found herself smiling at small things, the sound of sneakers squeaking down the hallway, the smell of wet grass drifting in from the football field, the way sunlight caught dust in the classroom air. None of it felt as empty as before. At lunch, she even sat near a group from her English class, not in the middle, but close enough to hear their laughter and, every now and then, add a quiet, "Yeah," or "Me too." No one told her to move, no one stared. It was small, but it mattered. That evening, she and Maya met again at the library. They'd started calling it their Thursday workshop, even though it was really just the 2 of them, swapping half-finished ideas and inside jokes. Maya was writing a story about a girl who built paper boats out of her secrets and set them afloat in a lake. Emma loved it instantly. "You always write about people who let go," Emma said. Maya smiled. "And I write about people who hold on. Maybe that's why it works." They spent the next hour in silence, the kind that didn't feel like distance, but understanding. Then Maya said softly, "You know, I used to eat lunch alone, too." Emma looked up. "Really?" "Yeah," Maya said, twirling her pencil. "Middle school, worst 2 years of my life. People think loneliness means you're invisible, but really, it just means you're still waiting for the right person to see you." Emma didn't know what to say, so she didn't. She just nodded, and somehow that said enough. When it was time to go, Maya handed her a folded note. "Read it later." That night, she opened it under her lamp. It said, "For when you forget, someone's glad you came." She pressed the note flat inside her mint green notebook and whispered to herself, "I think I'm starting to remember." Saturday arrived dressed in sunlight and the hum of something new, anticipation. Emma didn't recognize it at first. She hadn't felt it in a long time. It was that quiet thrill of having somewhere to be and someone waiting when she got there. The plan was simple. Maya had invited her to the weekend farmers market by the river. Emma had never gone before. It had always seemed like one of those places made for people who already belonged. But when Maya texted, "Meet me by the apple stand at 10. Bring your notebook," Emma didn't hesitate. She just smiled and replied, "I'll be there." The market was a burst of color and noise. Handmade soaps, sunflowers in mason jars, music from a guy playing guitar near the bridge. Emma felt awkward at first, weaving through the crowd, clutching her notebook like a lifeline. Then she saw Maya, waving with both hands, hair pulled up, cheeks flush with morning light. "You made it," she said, as if she hadn't really doubted it, but had hoped hard anyway. They spent the morning sampling honey, taking pictures of dogs in sweaters, and scribbling lines in their notebooks between bites of cinnamon donuts. At one stall, an older woman sold watercolor bookmarks, each painted with a single word: courage, bloom, begin. Emma picked one that said, "Listen." Maya chose, "Stay." When the woman handed them over, she smiled knowingly. "Funny," she said. "Those two belong together." Later, they sat by the river, legs dangling over the edge of the dock. Maya flipped through Emma's notebook and stopped at the poem "Almost." "I think," Maya said softly, "you're past almost now."
Emma stared at the water, her reflection rippling in gold. "You think so?" "I know so," Maya replied. "You just haven't caught up to it yet." For a long time, they said nothing. The breeze tugged gently at the pages of their notebooks, and for once, the silence didn't ache. It shimmered. That evening, when Emma got home, she taped the watercolor bookmark above her desk, right above her growing wall of good lines. And for the first time, she didn't write a new list or goal. She simply wrote one sentence. "Today, I was seen, and it didn't scare me." By the time November rolled around, the town had traded its golden leaves for bare trees and the smell of wood smoke. The chill felt honest, like the world wasn't pretending. Her days had a rhythm that almost felt like a song now. School, bus, library, cafe on Saturdays. And somewhere between all that, laughter. Quiet, but real. She and Maya had started a tradition. Every Saturday after open mic night, they'd walk to the old playground behind the cafe, sit on the swings, and talk about everything and nothing. It had become their secret world, one where both could just be, no performance needed. One night, as their breath turned to mist in the cold air, Maya kicked off the ground and said, "It's weird, right? How you can go from feeling like no one even knows your name to having someone who just gets you?"
Emma smiled, watching her friend drift higher into the dark sky. "Yeah, like one day you're invisible, and the next you're not, and you don't even know what changed." Maya tilted her head. "You changed, Em. You let yourself be seen." The words sat in the air for a while, glowing like the last trace of sunset. Emma laughed softly. "It still scares me, though. What if one day it all goes away?" "Then," Maya said, slowing her swing until her sneakers dragged lines in the dirt, "you'll still have proof that it once existed, and that means it can happen again." They sat in silence, the chains of the swings creaking gently. In the distance, the river murmured and a train rumbled faintly through the valley. Emma took out her mint-green notebook and wrote a single line by the dim light of her phone. "Being alone taught me who I was. Being seen is teaching me who I can be." When she looked up, Maya was watching her, smiling. "Save that one. You'll need it later." And though Emma didn't yet know what later meant, she believed her. December crept in quietly, wrapping the little Midwestern town in frost and string lights. The windows of Lincoln High fogged with warmth, while the world outside shimmered silver and white. Christmas songs played faintly from the cafeteria speakers, and the scent of cinnamon rolls drifted down the hallway. Emma walked to school bundled in her favorite scarf, notebook tucked safely in her backpack. It had become more than paper now. It was a journal, a map, a memory keeper. Every page held pieces of who she was becoming. At lunch, she sat by the window, tracing shapes in the condensation while groups of friends laughed nearby. She didn't feel left out anymore. Not exactly. She just felt different. She knew now that belonging didn't have to mean blending in. Sometimes it just meant finding one person who really heard you. After school, she met Maya at the library, their usual spot. Maya had brought 2 peppermint mochas and was scribbling in a notebook covered with doodles of snowflakes. "Happy almost winter break!" I grinned. "You're early." I was bored, and it's warm here. Besides, I wanted to show you something. She turned her notebook around. On the page was a flyer draft that read, "Winter Words, a community reading night, December 22nd, 7 p.m. at the Covered Bridge Cafe. Bring a story, poem, or song. Bring your courage, too." They asked if I'd help host it, and I told them I knew someone who had to read again. I blinked. "You mean me?" Maya's smile was mischievous. "Of course you. Your poem from October still lives rent-free in my head. You've got to share something new."
Emma laughed nervously. "I don't know." Maya sipped her mocha. "You don't have to know. You just have to show up." That night, at home, Emma sat by her window, watching snow fall in the yellow glow of the streetlight. She opened her notebook to a blank page and wrote, "When you don't have friends, you learn to keep your voice small. But sometimes, when someone listens, it remembers how to grow." She didn't know if it was ready to share, but she wrote anyway. The words were warm in her hands. Outside, snow whispered against the glass, and for the first time, winter didn't feel lonely. It felt alive. The week before Christmas break was a blur of snowflakes, half-finished homework, and twinkle lights tangled around everything. The whole town seemed softer, like even time had slowed down to watch the season happen. Emma's nerves, however, were anything but calm. The Winter Words reading night was just days away, and Maya was counting on her. Every time Emma thought about stepping up to the microphone again, her stomach flipped like a coin that never landed. "Just read what you wrote," Maya had said after school one day. "It's not about being perfect, it's about showing up." Emma wanted to believe that, so she practiced. At night, in her room, she read her new piece out loud to the soft hum of the radiator and the watchful eyes of her stuffed bear from childhood. Her voice trembled less each time. The words began to sound like they belonged to her. "When you don't have friends," she read softly, "you start to believe quiet means forgotten. But then someone answers the silence, and suddenly it isn't silence anymore." She exhaled, heart thudding. Maybe she could do this. Maybe the words could belong to someone else, too. The night of the event came quicker than she expected. The cafe was warm and bright, filled with people shaking snow from their coats, ordering cocoa and greeting each other with red noses and laughter. The stage looked smaller than she remembered, but somehow more welcoming. Maya was running around with a clipboard, cheeks flushed from excitement. When she spotted Emma, she ran over and grinned. "You came!" "I said I would," Emma said shyly. "I know, but I also know how hard that can be." When it was her turn, Emma stepped onto the stage, notebook in hand. Her fingers were cold despite the heat. She looked out at the audience, faces she didn't know, a few she did, and Maya's familiar one smiling up at her like a lighthouse. She read, slowly, carefully, honestly.
And when she finished, the crowd clapped, not out of politeness, but warmth. A few people even stood. Afterward, an older man with kind eyes came up to her. That line, he said, "Quiet means forgotten," that was something. "Keep writing, kid." Emma smiled, cheeks warm. "Thank you." When she turned around, Maya was there, holding 2 steaming cups of cocoa. "See?" she said. "Told you so." Emma laughed, the sound feeling strange and beautiful in her own mouth. "Yeah," she said softly. "You really did." That night, walking home under the falling snow, she realized something. She had written about loneliness, but what she'd really been writing was her way out of it. The next morning, Emma woke to pale winter sunlight spilling across her bedspread. The house was quiet, except for the creak of the old radiator and the distant hum of the laundromat downstairs. But this time, the quiet didn't press down. It wrapped around her like a soft blanket. She lay there replaying the night before. The glow of the cafe lights, the applause, Maya's grin, the man's kind words. It felt almost unreal, like something borrowed from someone else's life. But no, she'd earned it. It had happened. When she finally got up, she found her mom sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and flipping through her phone. "I saw a picture of you on the cafe's Facebook page," her mom said, smiling. "You looked happy." Emma blushed. "You follow the cafe?" "Of course," her mom said. "Best muffins in town. But seeing you there, that was better than any muffin." Emma laughed, sitting down with her cereal. It felt weird, in a good way. "Good," her mom said. "You deserve weird in a good way." Later, Emma met Maya downtown. The streets were slushy, the air smelling faintly of pine and coffee beans. They walked along the river, bundled in scarves, watching ducks cut ripples through the icy water. "You were amazing last night. Like, seriously. That poem? It's been in my head all day." Emma smiled shyly. "Thanks. I was terrified." "Good," Maya said. "If you weren't, it wouldn't have meant anything." They stopped at a small shop window filled with snow globes and books. Maya pointed to one shaped like a tiny town under glass. "That's us," she said. "You and me in a snow globe, frozen in a small town story that's somehow still moving." Emma laughed. "That sounds about right." They went inside, browsed for an hour, and each bought a small notebook. Maya's red, Emma's sky blue. "For new beginnings," Maya said as they checked out. That evening, back in her room, Emma opened the first page of her blue notebook and wrote, "I used to think not having friends meant I wasn't enough. But maybe it just meant I hadn't met the right mirrors yet. The ones who reflected something I could finally recognize."
She closed the book and looked at her wall, now covered in notes, poems, and scraps of courage. It looked like her heart had spilled outward and built itself a home. And as snow began to fall again outside her window, Emma realized something she'd never dared to think before. She wasn't lonely anymore. She was becoming. January arrived like a blank page, cold, clean, and full of space to fill. The holidays had come and gone, and the town was quietly returning to its rhythm. For Emma, though, everything felt different now. There was something steadier in the way she moved through her days, a quiet confidence that came from knowing she wasn't invisible anymore. People at school had started noticing her in small, almost shy ways. Someone from English class said they'd seen her at the cafe. A teacher asked if she'd consider submitting her poem to the school newsletter. Little moments that used to make her want to disappear now made her stand a bit taller. Still,
The best part of her days were the ones spent with Maya. They'd made a habit of meeting every Sunday afternoon at the cafe, sitting by the window where the frost made tiny rivers on the glass. Maya wrote fast and messy, words spilling out like laughter, while Emma wrote slow and deliberate, sculpting each line like it might break if she wasn't careful. One Sunday, Maya closed her notebook and said, "You ever think about how writing found us before we found each other?" Emma looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Well," said Maya, twirling her pen, "we were both writing about loneliness, right? And somehow those words, those lonely words, are what made us meet. It's like we were sending messages in bottles, and they actually washed up somewhere." Emma smiled. "Yeah, somewhere with good coffee." They both laughed. As the afternoon light shifted golden, Emma flipped open her notebook to a blank page and wrote, "Sometimes the people who save you aren't rescuers. They're just fellow travelers who happen to walk beside you for a while." When she looked up, Maya was sketching a little drawing in her red notebook. Two girls sitting under a bridge, sharing cocoa, surrounded by scribbles of stars. "That's us," Maya said proudly, showing her the doodle. Emma studied it for a moment and whispered, "You made me look brave." Maya grinned. "That's because you are." For the first time, Emma didn't argue. That night, as she packed her school bag, she found the old list she'd written months ago, the one that started it all. She smiled and added a new line beneath it. 7. Remember that becoming yourself counts as progress. Then she drew a little star beside it, a small, quiet celebration for how far she'd come.
February came draped in soft gray skies and the promise of spring hiding somewhere beneath the snow. The days stretched a little longer now. The light lingered as if it didn't want to leave. But with the change of season came something Emma didn't expect, a ghost from her before. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon at school. Emma was at her locker pulling out her history notebook when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Hey, Emma, right?" She turned. It was Hannah, a girl from her old math class, the kind of person who always seemed surrounded by friends and laughter, someone Emma used to quietly admire from the edges of the cafeteria. "Yeah," Emma said carefully. "Hey, I saw you at the cafe a few weeks ago. You read that poem, right? The one about being quiet?" Emma blinked, surprised she remembered. "Yeah, that was me." "It was really good," Hannah said, smiling. "Like, I don't usually listen to poetry, but that one stuck. My cousin writes too. You should meet her sometime." Emma didn't know what to say. Compliments used to feel like spotlights, too bright and uncomfortable. But now they felt like warmth. "Thanks," she said softly. "That means a lot." As Hannah walked away, chatting with her friends, Emma stood there for a moment, letting the conversation sink in. A few months ago, she would have replayed it all night, wondering what Hannah really meant. Now, she just smiled and moved on. That evening, she told Maya about it while they sat at their usual table in the cafe. Maya grinned. "See, the world's catching up to you." Emma laughed. "I guess so. Feels strange, though." "Yeah," Maya said. "That's what growing feels like. Strange in all the right ways." They spent the rest of the evening writing in companionable silence. When the cafe lights dimmed for closing, Maya leaned over and said, "You know what I like about us?" Emma looked up. "What?" "We remember who we were, but we don't live there anymore." Emma thought about that all the way home. Later, she wrote in her mint green notebook, "Before used to feel like a shadow I couldn't escape. Now, it feels like a friend I finally learned to forgive." And for the first time, she closed her journal without sadness. Just peace. March came softly, like an apology. The snow began to loosen its grip, dripping from rooftops and tree branches. The river, frozen for months, cracked open with a deep sigh, letting ribbons of water rush through again. Emma stood by the bridge after school, watching the ice break apart. It felt symbolic somehow, like something inside her was thawing too.
She'd been spending more time outside lately, sketching in her notebook, writing little fragments of thought. Maya called them word petals. Short, fragile, but beautiful in their own right. That afternoon, Maya met her by the bridge, camera slung around her neck. "I've been taking photos for this art project," she said, hopping onto the railing. "The theme's rebirth. Figured this place fits." Emma smiled. "Yeah, it does." Maya snapped a few pictures of the river, then turned the camera toward Emma. "Don't move." Emma blinked. "Wait, what? No, Trust me," Maya said. "You look like spring." The shutter clicked. When Maya showed her the picture, Emma didn't recognize herself at first. Her hair was wind-tossed, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. She looked alive. "That's not how I usually look," Emma said softly. Maya grinned. "It's how you are. You just don't see it every day." They walked along the riverbank after that, shoes muddy, laughter easy. "Sometimes I wonder if people can change completely, or if we just start finding the parts of ourselves that we're hiding." Maya thought for a moment. "I think we change by remembering who we were before the world told us to be quiet." Emma smiled. "Then maybe I'm finally remembering." That night, Emma printed the photo and taped it to her wall, right beside her bookmark that said, "Listen." Underneath, she wrote in her careful handwriting, "Spring doesn't ask permission to begin. It just does. So will I." And as the sound of melting snow whispered through the open window, she realized that the river wasn't the only thing learning to move again. By April, the world had shifted. The air smelled like wet earth and lilacs. The sidewalks were freckled with puddles, and the town finally looked awake again. Emma had begun to notice how seasons mirrored her moods. A few months ago, winter had felt like her reflection. Quiet, gray, waiting. Now, spring felt like her heartbeat. Messy, alive, becoming. At the cafe one Saturday, she and Maya sat by the open window, the breeze carrying laughter from the street. Maya was sketching again, tiny flowers growing out of coffee cups, while Emma wrote a short story about a girl who collected lost things, broken necklaces, abandoned notes, old photos left in library books. "What do you think?" Emma asked when she finished reading it aloud. Maya leaned back, thoughtful. She said, "It's you. You collect people the way she collects things. You find what others forget." Emma laughed, blushing. "I don't think I'm that deep." "You are," Maya said simply. "You just don't notice when you're shining." They spent the afternoon talking about things worth keeping. Memories, words, moments that changed them. For Emma, it wasn't hard to choose. "I'll keep the night I read my poem," she said. "The first time I wasn't afraid to be seen." Maya nodded. "And I'll keep this," she said, holding up her sketchbook. "All these pages with you in them." When the sky turned orange and the cafe lights blinked on, Maya closed her notebook and smiled. "We should do something," she said suddenly. "Like what?" "Something we'll remember. Something that scares us just a little." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You mean like skydiving?" No, not that kind of scary. I mean something brave. Maybe we sign up to teach at the summer writing camp in town. They're looking for volunteers." Emma froze.
Teach? Us? Why not? Maya said. You've got stories, I've got doodles. We'll teach kids how to put feelings into words. Emma's heart fluttered at the idea, terrifying and thrilling all at once. Let me think about it. Good. Thinking is the first step. Saying yes is the second. That night, at home, Emma added another line to her wall of good words. Keep what makes you brave, even if it started out as fear. Then, on a new page in her mint green notebook, she wrote one simple question. What if my story could help someone else find theirs? She didn't know the answer yet, but for the first time, she wanted to find out. By the time May rolled around, the trees were heavy with green, and the sidewalks sparkled with sunlight after every storm. The school year was winding down, and everyone was talking about summer plans, road trips, part-time jobs, and beaches. Emma didn't have plans yet, not until she saw the flyer on the library bulletin board again. Summer Words Camp. Volunteers needed. Help kids discover the joy of writing. It was the same one Maya had mentioned weeks ago. She stared at it for a long moment, the words blurring slightly as her heart picked up speed. She could almost hear Maya's voice in her head. Thinking is the first step, saying yes is the second. So she did. That night, she texted Maya. Emma, I signed up. Maya, you what? Emma, you said something brave. This counts. Maya, it more than counts. We're going to change lives and probably get covered in glitter glue. When summer finally arrived, the camp began in the community center by the river, where sunlight streamed through tall windows and the air smelled like paper, crayons, and possibility. The first day, Emma was terrified. Dozens of kids, wide-eyed and loud, filled the room with the kind of energy she used to find overwhelming. But then, one girl, maybe 9 years old, tugged at her sleeve and said, Miss Emma, how do you know what to write about? She smiled softly. You start with something that hurts, and you write until it doesn't hurt as much. The girl nodded like she understood completely and started writing. Maya, at the other end of the room, was sketching with a group of kids, laughter bubbling around her. When their eyes met across the tables, Maya mouthed, You're doing it. By the end of the day, Emma was exhausted, but the kind of tired that meant she'd done something that mattered. Walking home, the late summer sun warming her face, she thought about how far she'd come since those lonely library afternoons months ago. Back then, she'd only written to fill the silence. Now, she wrote to share it. That night, she opened her mint green notebook and wrote, Courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it signs up for something new and shows up anyway. Then, underneath, she added another line, simple, true, and shining. I said yes. By the second week of Summer Words Camp, Emma had memorized every child's name and every story that came with it. There was Jordan, who wrote about superheroes with anxiety, Leela, who only wrote in rhyme, and Amir, who said he hated writing, but secretly filled 3 pages every day. They reminded her of herself, tiny echoes of the girl who once wrote quietly in the back of the library, hoping someone would understand. One afternoon, during story hour, Emma asked the class to write about a time they felt alone. The room went unusually quiet. Pencils tapped, heads bent. For a few minutes, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Leela, the rhyming one, raised her hand. Can I read mine? She asked. Emma nodded. Leela stood, small but sure, and read, When I'm by myself, it's not so bad. I talk to my thoughts, and they're kind of rad. But when I write them down and someone reads, it feels like planting invisible seeds. When she finished,
The whole room clapped, even Amir. Emma felt something swell inside her, a quiet, powerful pride. Maybe this was what purpose felt like. During break, Maya plopped down beside her with a cookie in hand. "You're glowing," she said. "It's probably just the heat." "No," Maya said. "It's the joy. You look like someone who finally knows where she belongs." Emma looked out the window at the river shimmering in the sunlight. "You know," she said softly, "I think I do." That night she walked home with a few of the kids' stories tucked in her bag, unable to stop smiling. When she reached her room, she taped Leela's poem to her wall, right next to her bookmark that said, "Listen." Then she wrote in her mint green notebook, "Sometimes teaching is just reminding someone of the truth you needed to hear years ago. And sometimes," she added after a pause, "they end up teaching you instead." Emma put down her pen and looked around her room. Walls covered with words, photos, and fragments of courage. It didn't look like the room of a lonely girl anymore. It looked like the beginning of a life being lived. By mid-July, the camp had settled into a rhythm. Mornings full of crowns and metaphors, afternoons of spilled juice and laughter. The kids had begun calling Emma and Maya the Story Sisters, which made them both laugh every time. One Tuesday afternoon, while cleaning up after class, Mrs. Doyle, the camp coordinator, approached Emma with an envelope in her hand. "This came for you," she said, smiling. "It looks like mail from the kids' feedback box." Emma wiped her hands and took it. The envelope was small, crumpled, and sealed with a rainbow sticker. On the front, in uneven handwriting, it read, "To Miss Emma, from Someone Who Listens." Inside was a single piece of notebook paper folded twice. She opened it carefully. "Dear Miss Emma, I didn't like writing before. It made me feel dumb because I couldn't find the right words. But you said sometimes feelings don't come out as words at first. They come out as breathing. So I started breathing more. Then I wrote more. And now I like both. Thank you for not making quiet feel wrong. Jordan." Emma's eyes blurred. She read it again, slower this time, the words landing deeper. When Maya walked over and saw the letter, she smiled softly. "That's your impact, Em. You turned a quiet kid into a storyteller." Emma swallowed hard. "I just showed up." "That's the hard part," Maya said gently. "The rest follows." That night, Emma tucked Jordan's letter into her mint green notebook, the same one that had once held her fears, her lists, her almosts. It now held proof that she had made a difference. Underneath the letter, she wrote, "Once I wanted someone to tell me I mattered. Now I get to tell that to others. Maybe that's how healing works. It echoes." She closed the notebook and glanced at her wall of quotes and poems. Every piece, every line, every scrap of paper was part of her story now. A map of how she'd found her way back to herself. When she turned off the light and lay down, she whispered into the dark, just as she had months ago, but this time it wasn't a wish. It was gratitude. "Thank you for finding me when I didn't know where to look." August arrived dressed in gold. Warm evenings, lazy breezes, and the soft hum of cicadas by the river. Camp was ending soon, and though the kids were excited for summer break, Emma felt that familiar ache that comes when something good is nearing its goodbye. On the last Friday, the camp hosted a family reading night at the Covered Bridge Cafe, where it had all begun for her. The same fairy lights twinkled above the small stage, but this time, Emma wasn't the shy girl clutching her notebook in the back. She was helping the kids rehearse, cheering them on, guiding them with the same calm voice that once trembled through her own fear. Maya nudged her and whispered, "You realize this is a full circle moment, right?" Emma smiled. "I was thinking the same thing." When it was time for the event to start, parents filled the cafe, snapping pictures, sipping cocoa, waiting. The kids went one by one,
reading poems about friendship, dreams, and courage. Leela's Lime earned a round of applause. Amir even wrapped his story with a grin that made everyone laugh. And then Jordan stepped up to the microphone, holding his small blue notebook. He looked nervous, glancing toward Emma. She nodded gently, the way Mrs. Cruz used to nod at her in the library. Jordan took a deep breath and began to read. Once, I was quiet. But then I met someone who told me quiet is just another way of thinking. So I started writing, and now I don't want to stop. The audience clapped, some wiping tears, and Emma felt her heart swell until it almost hurt. After the reading, Mrs. Doyle handed Emma and Maya a framed photo of the class surrounded by doodles and signatures. Across the top, in bold marker, it said, "Thank you for teaching us to speak in our own ways." Emma didn't even try to stop the tears this time. Maya laughed and hugged her tightly. "We did it, story sister!" Emma hugged back. "Yeah, we really did." Later that night, after everyone left, Emma stood by the bridge outside the cafe, the same spot where she had once hesitated to cross. The lights shimmered on the water below, and for a moment she could almost see her old self there, standing alone, clutching a notebook, afraid to be known. She whispered to that girl, softly, "You made it." Then she stepped forward, crossing the bridge completely, the sound of the river beneath her like applause that never ended. The next morning, the air was thick with the sweetness of late summer, the kind of morning that hummed with endings and beginnings at once. Camp was officially over, but Emma woke up early anyway, her heart still buzzing from the night before. Her mom was already in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and humming along to an old song on the radio. "Big day yesterday," she said, when Emma walked in. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." Emma smiled sleepily, sitting at the table. "It didn't feel real until the kids started reading. Then it just hit me." Her mom poured syrup over a stack of pancakes and said softly, "That's how good things sneak up on you. They arrived quiet, like hope." After breakfast, Emma packed a bag and walked to the bridge one last time before school started again. Maya was already there, camera around her neck, tossing pebbles into the river. "You're late," Maya teased. "I was making peace with pancakes," Emma said, laughing. They sat together on the railing, feet dangling above the shimmering water. The air smelled of grass and sunlight. "So," Maya said, "what's next for the great Miss Emma? Teacher, poet, professional soul healer?"
Emma rolled her eyes. "I don't know. Maybe just keep writing. Keep helping." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I like that. Helping is the sequel to healing." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft rush of the river. Then Maya handed Emma a small wrapped package tied with twine. "What's this?" "An end of summer thing," Maya said. "Open it." Inside was a leather journal, deep brown with her name embossed in gold letters. Emma Rose. On the first page, in Maya's handwriting, it read, "For the stories you haven't told yet, and the ones you don't need to anymore." Emma felt her throat tighten. "It's perfect," she whispered. Maya smiled. "So are you." They stayed until the sun dipped low, their reflections stretching long and golden across the water. When Emma finally walked home, she carried the journal pressed against her chest. It wasn't just a gift, it was a promise. That night, she opened it and wrote her first line. Summer ended, but the courage stayed. Then she smiled, closed the cover, and whispered to herself, half reminder, half prayer, "Once I didn't have friends. Now I have stories that turned into them."
September slipped in, with the smell of sharpened pencils, coffee, and crisp morning air. Lincoln High buzzed with new schedules, new faces, and the faint hope that this year might feel different. For Emma, it already did. She stood at her locker on the first day, her mint green notebook replaced by the new leather journal Maya had given her. She traced her name embossed on the cover with her thumb, smiling. She wasn't invisible anymore, not because she'd suddenly become popular, but because she had learned to see herself. As she walked into homeroom, Hannah, the girl from months ago, waved her over. "Hey, Emma, you're in this class too?" Emma smiled. "Yeah, guess so." "Cool," Hannah said. "You should sit with us." The words might have once sent panic fluttering through her chest, but now they just made her heart warm. "Thanks," she said, sliding into the seat beside her. During the introductions, the teacher asked everyone to share one fun fact. When it was Emma's turn, she hesitated for a second, then said, "I teach writing to kids in the summer." A few heads turned. A boy in the back said, "Wait, that's actually awesome." And Emma just laughed, a small, proud sound that filled the quiet without apology. At lunch, she joined Hannah's group. They talked about classes, summer plans, and how weird cafeteria pizza still was. It wasn't like in movies, no instant best friends, no dramatic moment, but it was real, and that was enough. After school, Emma met Maya at the cafe, their old table waiting for them, like a saved place in a story. Maya was already sketching on a napkin, her red notebook open beside her. "So," Maya said, grinning, "how was your first day as a not-quite-invisible person?" Emma laughed. "Honestly, kind of nice. People noticed I existed." "Of course they did," Maya said. "You've been glowing for months." They sipped cocoa, the smell of cinnamon and roasted beans wrapping around them like memory. "Hey," Maya said suddenly, "you ever think we should write a book about all this?" Emma looked up, amused. "About what, 2 girls and a bridge?" Maya shrugged. "Why not? Some stories don't need dragons or magic, just truth." Emma smiled, gazing out at the river through the cafe window. Maybe we already started writing it. That night, in her journal, she wrote, "I used to walk through halls like a ghost. Now I walk through them like a story still being written. And for once, I'm not afraid of the ending." October drifted in again, a whole year since the first time Emma had found the cafe, the bridge, and a world that finally let her belong.
The leaves turned the same honeyed gold as before, but this time everything felt fuller, brighter, earned. One evening after school, Mrs. Cruz from the library called out to her as she passed the checkout desk. "Emma, wait, I have something for you." From beneath the counter, she pulled out a flyer. It read, "Youth Writers Showcase, accepting submissions, stories, essays, or poems. Winners will read on stage at the Lincoln Community Hall." "I thought of you," Mrs. Cruz said, smiling. "You're ready, you know." Emma's stomach fluttered. "You think so?" "I know so," Mrs. Cruz said, echoing words that sounded an awful lot like Maya's. That night, Emma told Maya, who immediately gasped like someone had just offered her free ice cream for life. "You have to submit something," Maya said. "You can even read Almost. It started everything." Emma shook her head. "No, I think I want to write something new." And she did. For 2 weeks, she worked on it every night after finishing her homework. She wrote at the cafe, on the bus, and sometimes by flashlight in bed.
The story became a reflection of everything she learned about loneliness, courage, and the quiet ways friendship saves people. When she finally finished, she titled it, "When You Don't Have Friends." It wasn't bitter or sad anymore. It was honest. It was about the girl she'd been and the girl she was still becoming. Maya helped her proofread it, doodling stars in the margins beside her favorite lines. "If this doesn't win, I'm personally rioting." Emma laughed. "Let's not get arrested over my metaphors." "No promises," Maya said. When she mailed the submission, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Quiet, but certain. Weeks later, on a cool Friday morning, an email pinged her phone. "Congratulations! Your story, When You Don't Have Friends, has been selected for the Youth Writers Showcase." Her hands trembled. She read the message twice, then 3 more times. Then she texted Maya just one word. "We did it! Heck yes! Get ready to be famous." That night, Emma opened her journal and wrote, "A year ago, I was afraid to speak. Now, my voice is finding places to live outside of me." She closed the journal and looked at the wall of memories she'd built. The bookmark, the photo, the notes, the quotes. Everything she'd kept told the story of a girl who once stood alone, but no longer did. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't writing about loneliness anymore. She was writing about connection. The evening of the Youth Writers Showcase came wrapped in nervous electricity and the faint smell of rain. Lincoln's Community Hall glowed with fairy lights strung across the stage and rows of folding chairs filled with families, teachers, and neighbors. Emma stood backstage, clutching her leather journal to her chest. Her palms were sweaty, her throat dry. Around her, other young writers whispered their pieces to themselves, pacing, rehearsing. She remembered the first time she'd been here, at the cafe months ago, terrified to speak. This time, the fear felt different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was alive. Maya appeared beside her, a camera slung around her neck as always. "Hey," she said softly. "Remember the first night you almost didn't go into the cafe?" Emma nodded. Maya grinned. "Good thing you did." They bumped fists, their quiet little ritual of courage. When it was her turn, Emma stepped onto the stage. The microphone stood waiting, the spotlight soft and golden. She looked out and spotted her mom near the front, eyes shining. Mrs. Cruz sat beside her. And next to them, Maya, smiling like she was watching the sunrise. Emma opened her journal. Her voice trembled only once before finding its rhythm. "Once, I thought being alone meant I was missing something. But now I know being alone was how I found the room to become someone. When you don't have friends, you learn to listen. To silence, to stories, to the way your own heart sounds when it starts to heal. And when you finally meet people who hear that sound too, it's like the world starts writing with you." When she finished, the audience was silent for a heartbeat. And then came the applause. It rose, soft at first, then louder, like waves folding over each other. Emma smiled through tears. She felt her heart open, wide and light, like a window in spring. Afterward, people came up to congratulate her. A teacher said, "You have a gift." Someone else whispered, That story sounded like mine. And then Jordan, her student from the summer camp, rushed up, clutching his little notebook. "Miss Emma," he said breathlessly, "I told my mom that's you. You're the one who taught me to write." Emma knelt down, smiling. "And you taught me that being quiet doesn't mean being small." When the hall emptied, Emma and Maya walked out into the cool light. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining under the streetlights. Maya nudged her. "You did it!" Emma laughed softly. "We did it!" They stopped on the bridge, the same one where everything had begun. The river below shimmered like ink beneath the lights. "I think," Emma said, "this story's almost over." Maya smiled. "Or maybe it's just the end of the first book." Emma looked out over the water, wind brushing her hair. "Yeah," she said, "I like that." And for the first time, she didn't feel like a character searching for her place. She felt like an author, writing it. The next morning, sunlight crept through Emma's curtains, catching the golden edges of everything in her room, her journal, the framed camp photo, the taped-up notes that had followed her all year. The applause from last night still echoed faintly in her chest, like the hum of something that didn't quite want to end. Downstairs, her mom was on the phone with someone, laughing. When she hung up, she called out, "You're in the local paper, Emma Rose." Emma blinked, half awake. "Wait, what?" Her mom held up her phone, showing a short article titled, "Local Teen Story on Friendship Moves Audience at Youth Writers Showcase." Underneath was a photo, Emma on stage, hands clutching her journal, eyes shining under the warm light. "They quoted you," her mom said proudly. "When you finally meet people who hear that sound too, it's like the world starts writing with you." Emma smiled, feeling both embarrassed and proud. "It doesn't even feel like me in that picture," she said softly. Her mom tilted her head. "That's what growth looks like, sweetheart. You're not supposed to look the same after finding yourself." Later, Emma met Maya at their usual cafe. Maya was already there, 2 hot chocolates waiting, phone buzzing with notifications.
"You are famous," she said. "People at school are sharing the article." Emma groaned. "Oh, no." "Oh, yes," Maya teased. "You are officially Lincoln's poet of feelings." They laughed until tears ran down their cheeks. Then, in one of those rare, quiet moments, Maya looked at her and said softly, "You changed, you know, but not in the way people think. You didn't become someone new. You just stopped hiding who you already were." Emma looked down at her cocoa, tracing circles in the foam. "Maybe," she said, smiling, "but it feels like I've finally met myself." Before leaving, Maya handed her a postcard she'd picked up at a thrift shop. On the front was a picture of a bridge at sunrise. On the back, she'd written in blue ink, "Keep crossing every bridge that scares you. The view on the other side is always worth it." Emma slipped it into her journal. That night, she sat by her window again, the same spot where she used to write about being lonely. The difference now was startling. The silence outside didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. She opened her journal and wrote, "The applause fades, the crowd leaves, but the story keeps breathing." Maybe that's what friendship really is. People who keep your story alive, even after the chapter ends. Then she turned off her lamp and let the quiet hold her. A few weeks later, fall deepened. The air turned crisp again, and the trees blazed gold, red, and orange as if the world itself were on fire in slow motion. Emma loved this time of year. It smelled like possibility and nostalgia mixed together. The showcase buzz had faded, but its ripples remained. A few people she barely knew at school stopped her in the hallway to say they'd read her article online. Even a teacher asked if she'd consider reading at the spring assembly. Every time, Emma's heart fluttered, but in a softer, steadier way now.
One chilly afternoon, when the sky hung low and gray, Emma checked the mail before heading upstairs to study. Inside the mailbox were 2 envelopes, one from the Covered Bridge Cafe and one with handwriting she didn't recognize.
The first one was an invitation. Open mic anniversary night, celebrating 1 year of stories. We'd love our earliest storytellers to return. Emma smiled. 1 year. She hadn't even realized how much time had passed since that first night, the night she almost didn't walk through the cafe door. The second letter stopped her for a moment. The return address was from the summer writing camp. She tore it open carefully. Dear Miss Emma, we miss you. Jordan read his new story today and said you taught him that quiet is where imagination grows. We all decided to write letters to the people who helped us believe in our words. Thank you for helping us find ours. Your Story Camp Kids, Yellow. Emma pressed the paper to her chest, feeling that same warmth spread through her, the kind that came from being seen, but also from seeing others. That evening she met Maya at the bridge, the one where it had all started. The air was cool and filled with the rustle of leaves. She handed Maya both letters. Maya read them slowly, then smiled. Guess what that means? What? Emma asked. We're going back to where the story began. Emma laughed. You mean the cafe? Exactly, Maya said. Only this time, we're not the scared girls in the back. We're the ones who get to welcome the next ones in. Emma looked out over the water, its surface mirroring the sunset in ripples of orange and rose. A bridge, she said softly, isn't just for crossing, is it? Maya shook her head. Nope. Sometimes it's for remembering how far you've come. That night, Emma added to her journal again. A year ago, I was afraid to be found. Now I'm learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay found. And beside it, she taped the camp letter, proof that every word, every small kindness had found its way home. The evening of the cafe's 1 year of stories event arrived with the familiar hum of autumn. Crisp air, amber streetlights, and the smell of roasted coffee and cinnamon. Emma stood outside the Covered Bridge Cafe, her breath clouding in front of her. The building looked the same, but to her, everything about it felt different. Inside, the room buzzed with voices and laughter. The fairy lights were brighter, the stage decorated with Polaroids of past performances, smiling faces frozen mid-song or mid-sentence. And right there, near the corner of the collage, was a photo of Emma from her very first reading, eyes down, notebook clutched tight. Maya appeared beside her, camera hanging from her neck. Look at you, she said softly, the girl who started the whole ripple. Emma shook her head, smiling. We started it. They found a table near the front, the same one they'd sat at a year ago. Mrs. Cruz was there too, waving from a few rows back. Even Mrs. Doyle from the summer camp had shown up, clapping as kids from the camp signed up for the open mic. When it was Emma's turn to read, her hands didn't shake this time. She stepped onto the small stage and took in the crowd, the people who had in some way shaped her story. She smiled and opened her journal. 1 year ago, I stood in this very spot, trying to make peace with being alone. I didn't know then that sometimes when you speak into the quiet, the world answers back. I didn't know that a poem could become a bridge, or that a bridge could become a friendship, or that a friendship could become a life. The audience was still. Even the espresso machine seemed to hush itself. So tonight, Emma continued, I just want to say this. To everyone who's ever felt unseen, keep writing. Because sometimes what you write doesn't just find readers, it finds you. Applause filled the cafe, warm, thunderous, alive. Afterward, Maya ran up to her, laughing through tears. "You did it again! You made a room full of people cry in the best way." Emma grinned. "Occupational hazard." They stayed late, helping stack chairs and wipe tables, lingering because neither wanted the night to end. When they finally stepped outside, the town was quiet under a blanket of stars. Maya looked up. "Do you ever think about how far we've come since that first night?" Emma nodded. "Every day." "And do you ever think," Maya said, smiling, "that maybe this isn't the end?" Emma glanced at her, then at the glowing cafe behind them. "No," she said softly. "It's just another beginning." As they crossed the bridge, their laughter echoing into the cool night air, Emma looked over the side at the river below, calm, endless, reflecting every light. It felt, somehow, like the story itself was watching her walk home. The next morning, Lincoln was quiet again. Sunday quiet. The streets were empty except for drifting leaves and the low hum of the river in the distance. Emma woke up later than usual, her throat still warm from laughter and applause the night before. For the first time, she didn't reach straight for her journal. She just lay there, watching sunlight spill across her walls, touching the pages and photos taped there like gentle hands. The bridge photo, the camp letter, the cafe flyer. Every piece told her story. Not the story of being lonely, but the story of learning how to be alive in her own skin. Around noon, she walked downtown to meet Maya for brunch. The cafe was still closed, the chalkboard sign reading, "Thank you for 1 year of voices." They went instead to the diner across the street, the one that always smelled like maple syrup and fresh toast. Maya was already there, sipping iced coffee and sketching on a napkin. "Morning, author," she said. "Sleep in?" Ima smiled. "A little. I think my heart was still too full to shut off." They ate pancakes and talked about everything. The kids from camp, school, college applications, and Maya's latest art project. But then Maya leaned forward, her tone quieter. "I'm thinking about leaving Lincoln after graduation, art school in Chicago." Emma's fork paused mid-air. She'd known it would happen eventually. They were both growing, changing, but hearing it out loud made her chest tighten. "Wow," she said softly. "That's huge. You're really doing it?" Maya nodded, eyes bright. "Yeah, I think it's time. But Em," she reached across the table, "we'll still write, right? We'll still share stories, even from different cities?" Emma smiled, though her eyes burned a little. "Of course we will. Words travel farther than people." After brunch, they walked to the bridge again, because somehow that's where every conversation seemed to belong. The air shimmered with that bittersweet energy of things changing, but not ending. Maya took a photo of them together, arms linked, river glinting behind them, and said, "For the last page of our first book." Emma laughed. "I like that. But you know what's funny?" "What?" "It doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a comma." That night, Emma returned home and finally opened her journal. She wrote slowly, carefully. "Stories move the way rivers do. They don't stop when you walk away from the shore. They just carry a part of you forward." She looked at the space left on the page, just one more blank section before the journal would be full. And she knew exactly what needed to go there. The next week, fall deepened into gold. Leaves spiraled down the sidewalks, and the river shimmered like glass under the afternoon sun.
It was one of those days that felt like both an ending and a promise. Quiet, bright, and full of air that smelled like goodbye. Emma sat on the bridge after school, her brown leather journal open on her lap. The pages fluttered in the wind, filled now with a year's worth of words, the whole journey from silence to connection, from loneliness to belonging. She flipped through the pages slowly. Her first shaky poems, Maya's doodles, Jordan's letter, the camp flyer, the newspaper clipping. Every line, every taped memory was proof of something she hadn't realized until now, that she had never been truly alone. She had just been becoming ready to be found. Across the river, the cafe lights were starting to glow, soft and warm. She could almost hear the laughter inside, the sound of people telling stories that mattered. Maya joined her after a while, breath visible in the cool air. "You knew I'd find you here," she said. Emma smiled. "You always do." They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. The water below moved steadily, carrying reflections of the sky. "So," Maya said finally, "what are you writing for your last page?" Emma looked down at her journal, then back at her friend. "Not an ending," she said softly, "a beginning." She uncapped her pen and began to write. Slow, steady, every letter deliberate. "Once upon a time, I thought stories were for people who already had someone to tell them to. But I learned that stories are how you find those people. When you don't have friends, you start by talking to the page. Then, one day, the page talks back, through the people who read it, through the ones who listen, through the ones who stay. I used to write so I wouldn't feel alone. Now I write because I know I'm not." When she finished, she closed the journal gently. The gold letters of her name shimmered in the fading light. Maya leaned over and smiled. "So, what happens next?" Emma looked out at the water, the town, the bridge that had carried her through every version of herself. She felt the answer settle inside her, calm, sure, infinite. "Whatever I decide to write," she said. They sat there until the sun disappeared, two silhouettes against a sky turning lavender, their laughter rising with the wind. And though the story of When You Don't Have Friends reached its final page, it didn't really end. It just kept moving, like the river beneath the bridge, like the hearts of the people brave enough to begin again.